There was once a village that chose to disappear. Not destroyed by fire, not wiped away by invaders, but deliberately abandoned by its own people. Imagine waking at dawn, packing what little you own, and walking away from the graves of your ancestors, because staying means death. In the shadow of the Black Death, when plague carts rolled through Europe and famine hollowed entire regions, one medieval community made a radical decision. They would relocate. They would leave behind infected wells, exhausted fields, and collapsing homes, and begin again somewhere safer. In places like Lubeck and rural England, records whisper of settlements shifted uphill, away from marshland, away from contaminated water, away from trade roads that carried disease. The most haunting example lies in the deserted village of Warham Percy, where earthworks still trace vanished streets. Why would an entire medieval village uproot itself in an age when travel was dangerous and land was tied to survival? The answer reveals not panic, but strategy. It reveals a forgotten form of resilience, a calculated retreat in the face of plague, famine, and social collapse. To understand this relocation, you have to step into the chaos of the 14th century. The Black Death swept across Europe between 1347 and 1351, killing millions. Trade routes became corridors of infection. Villages built near rivers or marshes, once prized for fertile soil, suddenly found themselves trapped in unhealthy environments. Add to this a cooling climate and repeated crop failures, and you have communities stretched to breaking point. In England, manorial records show entire settlements shrinking or vanishing. Some were abandoned after population collapse, others moved deliberately. Archaeologists studying sites like Warham Percy found evidence not just of decay, but planned withdrawal. Houses were dismantled systematically. Usable timber was removed. New foundations appeared on higher, better drained ground nearby. This was not random flight. Medieval villagers observed patterns. They noticed that low-lying areas bred illness. They saw that overworked soil yielded less each year. Lords sometimes encouraged relocation to consolidate scattered populations into defensible, manageable clusters. In an era without germ theory, people still connected environment with survival. They could not name bacteria, but they could read warning signs in water, soil, and wind. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. So, how do you relocate an entire village in the Middle Ages? Imagine the planning. First, leaders would identify higher ground, ideally near a clean water source like a spring rather than a stagnant stream. You know how important water is. It had to be accessible, but not prone to flooding. Next came surveying, often done by pacing out plots with rope and wooden stakes. The new layout was sometimes tighter, more organised, reflecting lessons learned from scattered farmsteads that were hard to defend or manage. Timber from old homes was carefully dismantled, beams labelled or marked with simple cuts so they could be reassembled. Stone foundations were left behind, but valuable dressed stones were reused. Fields were reorganised, sometimes shifted closer to the new centre to reduce travel time and exposure. Even burial grounds could be relocated gradually, a painful but symbolic reset. Here is the overlooked genius. Relocation allowed soil to recover. Abandoned fields lay fallow for years, naturally restoring fertility. By moving, villagers broke cycles of contamination and exhaustion. It was an early form of environmental reset, born from necessity rather than theory. At first glance, medieval relocation feels extreme. Yet today, entire communities face similar decisions due to climate change, rising seas, and environmental degradation. The concept of managed retreat echoes what those villagers practiced centuries ago. Instead of clinging to failing land, they chose mobility. They understood that survival sometimes means letting go. There is also a lesson in adaptability. They reused materials, minimized waste, and redesigned their settlement based on hard experience. In modern urban planning, relocating neighborhoods away from floodplains follows the same principle. Study the risk. Move before disaster becomes irreversible. Even on a personal level, the strategy resonates. If your environment consistently harms your health or livelihood, strategic change can be more powerful than stubborn endurance. Medieval villagers did not have scientific models or satellite data. They relied on observation and collective decision-making. They acted together, which reduced chaos and increased success. Their story challenges the assumption that pre-modern societies were passive victims of catastrophe. In reality, they experimented, adapted, and sometimes chose radical solutions to preserve the future. Today, when you walk across the grassy mounds of a deserted medieval village, it feels eerily quiet. Foundations outline former homes. A hollow marks where a church once stood. It is easy to interpret abandonment as failure. But in some cases, it was a deliberate act of survival. A village that relocates is not defeated. It is evolving. Those families who gathered their tools, livestock and children and stepped toward uncertain ground carried with them more than possessions. They carried knowledge earned through suffering. They understood that land can sicken, that resources can collapse, and that staying rooted is not always strength. Sometimes resilience means movement. In a world once again confronting pandemics, environmental stress, and social strain, their decision feels strikingly relevant. We are not the first to face collapse. We are not the first to choose adaptation over ruin. The medieval village that walked away from plague and famine left behind empty streets, but it also left a powerful lesson. Survival belongs to those willing to rethink home itself. If this story changed how you see the ruins of the past, stay curious and keep exploring, because history still holds maps for the challenges ahead. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned